AITA for kicking out my fiancée and my cousin after catching them together? My mooching cousin Brandon stayed at my house for a few months to pursue his music career. A random pizza charge was the red flag that led me to find him and my fiancée kindled together in my bed. So I kicked them out and watched them deal with the consequences. And now my family is calling me dramatic. Let me give you some context so you understand my situation. I, a 31-year-old man, live in Richmond, Virginia. Before the circus arrived, I had a quiet happiness that suited me well. Work was fine, not a dream, but it was honest. I had a savings account so boringly consistent it made me proud. My weekends had predictable joys. A morning farmer's market with peaches that tasted like someone had bottled the sun, a thrift store where the cashier knows my name, a whole shelf at the library that made me feel like a person with a plot. If this sounds small to you, that's fine. It wasn't to me. My life was a tidy table where everything had its place. Then someone dragged a muddy chair across it and called it spontaneity. Brandon is my aunt and uncle's golden child. He's tall, smiles quickly, and can charm a barista into giving him extra oat milk without asking. As kids, he was the boy who would forget his wallet and still walk away with snacks. At family gatherings, he did impressions, and the adults would laugh as if he were auditioning for a life he thought he already had. He talked about music like it was a friend who owed him a favor. The words budget and plan gave him hives. Last spring, he called me, his voice soaked in urgency and sweetness. "Cousin, I'm moving to your city. I've got momentum. I just need a soft landing for a couple of months. I'll contribute, I promise, utilities, food, whatever." His parents followed up with their own plea, loaded with the word family. I said yes, but I set rules. 3 months. Max contribute to utilities and food. Clean up after yourself. No late night noise because I get up early. No strangers in my house without advance notice. I wrote it all down in a text thread so there would be proof we agreed. He replied with 3 rocket emojis and a handshake emoji, which I now understand is not legally binding. He arrived with 2 suitcases and what looked like a migration of clothes and trash bags. He threw his backpack on my armchair, looked around like a realtor showing a house to himself, and said, "Bro, this is the home base." He meant it as a compliment. He took the second bedroom and immediately declared my kitchen a creative space because he liked to pace and rhyme with a spoon in his hand. He stuck post-it notes with phrases on my fridge, which would have been charming if he hadn't also left half-eaten cereal bowls forming new civilizations in the sink. The first week, he Venmo'd me for half of a grocery run he called an investment in our futures. After that, Venmo started having mysterious glitches every Friday. His contributions became promises with dates that slid around like oil in a pan. He used exposure as currency. "I'll tag you in my post. That's worth, like, half an internet bill." He didn't just love my couch, he adopted it. He called my speakers the hours and my Wi-Fi community infrastructure. Brandon collected people the way some collect ceramic mugs. Strangers became the crew. "My engineers are coming over," he'd announce, and a person I'd never seen before would sit at my dining table with a laptop and eat my grapes. My "no strangers without advance notice" rule morphed in his head into notice within 5 seconds of the doorbell ringing. He had fans who were friends who were fans, all somehow thirsty at midnight and very specific about sparkling water brands. I started logging every uninvited session in a list so I wouldn't gaslight myself later. The noise was allergic to headphones. "I have to hear it in the room," he'd say, which meant the room was my living room. The subwoofer made my silverware vibrate like it wanted to escape. I asked him to keep it down after 10 o'clock. He nodded. Then the next night, he'd play a track at 11 and say, "Sorry, I lost track of time." He was always losing track of time. He perfectly remembered when food delivery windows were due to close. He borrowed my hoodie and forgot to return it until I found it on the balcony floor, smelling of ambition and cologne. He started referring to my car as the whip and would offer to get gas later, which translated to, "I used it and left the tank on empty." I nipped that in the bud by never giving him the keys again. He tried to add himself to my streaming accounts so we can all watch the documentary on my genre. I changed my passwords and told him to get his own account. He said, "You're so corporate." I work a normal job, not whatever he imagined. The bills arrived. I put the utility statements on the table with sticky notes showing his half. He took a picture of the note and said, "I'll get you on Friday." Friday became Saturday. Saturday became my check is pending. Pending. I became his client. He ghosted me. Then the power bill was due, and the only thing that ran out was my patience. My aunt called with her brand of soft manipulation. He's on the verge of a breakthrough, she said. He needs people to believe in him. He'll pay you back when the gigs start rolling in. My uncle chimed in. He's got that energy. Don't crush it. Meanwhile, my energy was going into scrubbing soap rings from the bathtub because creative people have shower thoughts and forget to rinse. The Homeowners Association sent me a noise warning for after midnight. I went cold reading it because warnings become fines, and fines become committee meetings where neighbors with clipboards read you your rights. I pulled Brandon aside. This is non-negotiable, I said, showing him the letter. No more late-night sessions, no more guests without asking, and you owe me for the last 2 utility bills. He hugged me and said, You're the only one who gets me. That wasn't an answer. I emailed myself with the subject line, Conversations with Brandon, and logged the date, time, and the words, non-negotiable. I didn't want to be the cousin who drags his cousin to court. I wanted to be the cousin who doesn't lose his mind. Now comes the part where I meet my fiancée, Kindle. Well, ex-fiancée now. I met her at a friend's game night. She beat me at a card game by counting cards like a mathematician. She laughed easily and told stories with the kind of detail that makes you feel like you were there. We talked about the future with our feet on the ground. A small wedding, a backyard reception, maybe 2 kids, and we'd decide together that we were people capable of handling sleep deprivation. At some point, the simple comfort started to slide toward upgrades. She'd send me pictures of rings I couldn't afford and say, just for fun. She'd stop in front of a boutique, point to a dress, and say, not now, but someday. When I looked at venues online, she'd filter by the most expensive and say, you only do this once. I wanted to give her nice things. I didn't want to drown in nice things. I saved for a modest ring. More accurately, I saved for a ring that represented me. Paid in cash, nothing flashy, nothing insulting. I asked her father for his blessing because I'm old-fashioned, or I just like to formalize moments. He said yes with a smile that had calculation behind it. I proposed in a park by the duck pond, where the ducks were more enthusiastic than some of the picnickers. She said yes, cried, and held me like she meant it. We took a picture where my hand looks weird because I'm still learning what to do with my hands in photos. Engaged Life kicked her upgrade settings to another level. She started talking about color palettes, signature desserts, and live music because playlists feel cheap. She said, we can have a simple wedding, but simple doesn't have to look simple. She took me to a rental showroom and went straight for the most expensive chairs. It's about the experience, she said, and I nodded while my stomach did the math. Money talks got tricky. She wanted to open a joint account. I wanted to set a budget first. She floated the idea of adding her as an authorized user on my card just for wedding expenses to make it easier. I said we could use gift cards for vendors. She gave a soft eye roll and then kissed my cheek like I was adorable and old-fashioned. She and Brandon had a weird vibe from the start. At first, she was annoyed by his noise and his mess. Then she started getting curious about his process, asking questions, laughing at the moments he wanted her to laugh. They'd sit in the kitchen and he'd talk about the industry, and she'd feel like she was in a master class. He told her she had the look for music videos. She laughed like it was a harmless compliment. I decided to be happy my fiancé was getting along with my family. That was my first mistake, maybe the second. Little red flags started to pop up. She had a habit of accidentally using my delivery app profiles when we were together, sending a smoothie to her place on my dime because my address was saved. She almost added herself to my gym membership as a household member while helping me renew it, then said, oops, as if shared benefits were free. She liked to post pictures of us that featured things I'd bought. She collected brand names in her captions like stamps. It wasn't cruel. She was curating an image. She once quietly asked if we could put her name on the deed to my house to get a good start. I said, that's not how this works. Not yet. Maybe never. She pouted for 30 seconds, then changed the subject to cupcake tasting. I tried to shake the feeling that we were auditioning for a life I hadn't agreed to. Meanwhile, Brandon was still flaking on his share of the bills and hosting impromptu sessions. He tried to get me to co-sign on a studio lease with rent that assumes you've already made it. I said no so fast it surprised even me. He laughed and called me cautious, like it was a diagnosis. He started calling my fiancée by a nickname that sounded too familiar coming out of his mouth. I told myself I was overreacting because I was managing money anxiety, early wedding planning, and a cousin who thought my fridge was a nonprofit. I kept running, kept taking pictures of receipts and filing them. I kept telling myself that being responsible doesn't mean being cheap, it just means being awake. And then the day came. It was a Saturday. I was at the hardware store buying adhesive hooks and vacuum bags because that's my idea of weekend fun. My phone buzzed with a notification, a pizza order. 2 toppings, delivered to my address. $30-some. I hadn't ordered pizza. I checked my wallet. The card was gone. My stomach dropped in stages. My brain stalled. Then I landed on the only explanation that lined up with the city and my doorbell. Someone in my house had used my card. I locked the card in the app. I took a screenshot and drove home. The living room smelled like garlic and a decision I hadn't made. An open box sat on the kitchen counter like a business card. 2 slices were missing. The rest were tilted like they were judging me. The hall was quiet. The bedroom wasn't. I didn't kick the door down. I opened it like I was checking if I'd left a light on. Kendall and Brandon were there, together, in my bed. They froze. The world went weird, like it had taken half a step to the left while I stayed put. My first words weren't cinematic. They were 2 sentences. Get out of my bed. Who used my card? Kendall pulled the sheet up as if the fabric could erase reality. Brandon stared like the script had forgotten his lines. The delivery guys are strict about the address, he said, as if logistics were the problem. Kendall said, can I explain? In a voice that made me hate the word explain. I stepped back, went to the front door, set my phone to record on the entry table, came back, and kept my voice steady because one of us had to be an adult, and I wasn't taking on another role. You have 10 minutes to get dressed and leave, I said. You're not welcome here anymore. Brandon laughed once. A short, weak laugh that wanted to sound confident. Bro, it just happened. Kendall said, please don't make a decision like this when you're upset. I set a timer on my phone and left it on the dresser. The sound of the countdown filled the space where I wanted to scream. They stumbled around. Clothes on. Inside out. Fine. An ugly silence. I repeated 2 sentences. You need to leave, and you can schedule a time to get your things with a third party present. Kendall stood at the door, her eyes glassy, and said, I thought you wanted excitement. I said, I wanted a partner. Brandon, fumbling for his shoe, mumbled, this is crazy, as if he were a bystander and not the main event. They were gone before the timer hit 0, which felt like the only point I won that hour. I locked the door, slid to the floor, and didn't cry. I took pictures, the pizza box, the time, my bed, the timer. I stripped the sheets and put them in a bag as if the bag could carry the worst of it. I opened my notes and wrote a timeline. Time of charge, time of arrival, time of discovery. Exact phrases spoken. I texted Brandon's parents. Brandon is no longer permitted in my home. He needs to find another place to live immediately. Contact him directly. I texted Kendall. Return the ring by Friday. Then I called the bank from the app, reported the charge as unauthorized, attached the screenshot, and saved the chat as a PDF. I changed passwords on delivery apps. I removed any device I didn't recognize. I turned on 2-factor authentication on everything that allowed it and printed the confirmation emails like I was printing a new identity. I scheduled a professional cleaning for Monday with a request to sanitize the bedroom. I booked a locksmith for the next morning. I was quiet in my house while the world in my chest roared. I did adult paperwork because it was either that or hand the keys over to my nervous system. Then the text came. Brandon, 6 paragraphs of it just happened. We're adults, and we're family. Kendall, 3 messages. I'm so sorry. I love you. And please don't tell anyone. My aunt. A voicemail accusing me of overreacting. Hidden behind, we love you. I made tea and watched the steam like it might spell out the next step. It didn't spell anything. I slept on the couch with a blanket that suddenly felt very small. I didn't post. I did admin. I disputed the pizza charge with the bank, included the screenshot, received the temporary credit, and printed the chat. I filed a police report for unauthorized card use. Not because I wanted handcuffs, but because paper is power when lies start walking on their own. I changed passwords, deleted Remember This card from every app, kicked unknown devices off my Wi-Fi, and switched 2-factor authentication from text to an app. I canceled my cousin's guest access on everything. I drew up a simple release form for Brandon's things and packed his belongings. Microphone cables, hats, 3 pairs of sneakers that looked identical but clearly weren't to him. I labeled the boxes with painter's tape. Pick up Tuesday, 6 p.m., 30 minutes. A friend will be present. I read up on engagement ring laws in my state. Conditional gift. It's not about feelings, it's about conditions. If the marriage doesn't happen, the ring goes back. I wrote a formal, polite demand letter to Kendall. Return the ring within 10 days, or I would file for its recovery or its value. Certified mail to her parents' house with delivery confirmation. I felt nothing in everything. I tallied costs that weren't optional. Locksmith, cleaning, mattress replacement, because no. Utility hikes from late-night sessions, groceries that evaporated, and the fair share Brandon promised and never paid. I couldn't retroactively create a lease, but unjust enrichment is a real thing. If you live off someone, promise to pay, and don't, a court might care. I highlighted the text where he said, "I'll get you on Friday." Friday again. Brandon was late for his pickup with a sidekick who stared at his phone like it owed him money. He tried to come inside. I stood in the doorway. He tried to make small talk. I pointed to the boxes and the form. He signed with a scribble that said, "This is beneath me," and asked for oat milk on his way out. I closed the door softly and reset my timer habit to just keep moving. Kendall didn't return the ring that Friday or the next. "I can't find the box," she texted. "Return the ring," I replied. When she didn't, I filed in small claims court. 2 claims. One against Kendall for the ring or its value. One against Brandon for utilities, cleaning, the locksmith, and a portion of housing costs based on his stay and his promises. I attach what you're supposed to attach: receipts, texts, photos, timelines. The clerk liked that the forms were stapled. No, bureaucracy likes orderly grief. They had to be served. A local process server found Kendall at her parents' front door and Brandon at a friend's place, pretending to deliver something he'd actually want to receive. People sign for things out of muscle memory, and it betrays them. The court date wasn't like on TV. The judge was direct. For Kendall, I explained the conditional gift law. The judge asked if she had the ring. She said she'd lost it. The judge didn't blink. No proof of loss, no report, nothing. Judgment. Return the ring within 10 days or pay its value per my receipt. For Brandon, he tried to argue vibes and his contributions to the scene. The judge asked for receipts. He had none. I had a stack and a simple voice. I didn't get everything I asked for, but I got enough. His share of utilities, the cleaning, the locksmith, and a portion of housing costs for 3 months. The mattress was denied. That's fine. I walked out lighter. Judgments are paper. You turn them into money with more paper. Post-judgment discovery means you get to ask where the money is. Brandon ignored the questionnaire. He missed a hearing, got an order to comply. He scrawled, "Not applicable," like a teenager and finally admitted he had an account at a credit union, got paid by check at a local bar, and received a small grant through a community center. Thank you. I garnished the bank account through the sheriff. It wasn't a windfall, but it wasn't zero. Then I served the bar with a wage garnishment order. The performance check started coming with a haircut. He posted vague stories about haters blocking blessings. I closed the app and checked another box on my sheet. Kendall didn't return the ring or pay by the deadline. I filed for wage garnishment. I knew where she worked because, back then, some days I picked her up at the entrance. The order went through. Her next paycheck cried a silent tear. She texted me, "You're ruining my life." I typed, deleted, then sent, "Return the ring." She didn't reply. The garnishment kept doing its quiet work. I told the HOA there had been an unauthorized occupant issue, and it was now resolved. I told the community center about Brandon's civil judgment because their grant language said recipients had to maintain certain standards. I didn't exaggerate. I sent the case numbers. A week later, he was pulled from a showcase. He called it a break. It was a door closing that he had kicked open himself. I wasn't joyful. I was sleeping better. It's different. The family chat exploded once the paperwork started doing what pep talks never did. My aunt led with, "You're overreacting. This should have stayed in the family." I replied once, "I'm not discussing this. Please stop." I muted the thread and took screenshots. Documented pattern. Minimize, blame, pressure. I sent a short boundary text to the specific relatives who kept calling. "I will not house Brandon. I will not discuss Kendall. Any further contact on this will be blocked." Any attempt to contact my work will trigger legal action. A cousin tested it, hinting he might mention things to someone he thought was my coworker. My coworker forwarded me the message. I sent a simple cease and desist template, attaching my case numbers. Silence followed. Paper beats gossip. Kendall's mother left a voicemail about rent. Her check had come up short because of the garnishment. Please lift it. I didn't call back. A garnishment is a court order, not a mood. If she wants it changed, the path is the same public process I used. I logged the message and moved on. My aunt called twice more with new angles. First call. Brandon is at a crucial point. You're blocking his momentum. Second call. You were always the safe one, not the best one. Translation. Reliable until your boundaries affect our convenience. I wrote summaries of both calls with dates and times. No arguing, just logging. I did small, specific prevention. I emailed the HOA manager with a factual note. Unauthorized occupant issue resolved. Locks changed. No ongoing concern. That cuts off any he's still living there stories before they start. I added the police report number for the unauthorized card used to my file, plus the credit memo from the bank. If anyone tried to call this a fight, I had a timeline and third-party records. Kendall tried a back-channel negotiation. If you lift the order, I'll pay you in cash. I replied, payments continue through payroll. Cash creates confusion. Payroll creates receipts. The next pay cycle, the garnishment hit again. I tracked the balance on a spreadsheet called Ring Recovery. No victory laps, just numbers shrinking. Brandon's post shifted from bragging to complaining. He said haters were messing with the bag. Offline, the garnishment on his bar checks worked exactly as designed. Some nights he got paid in cash and slipped through. Other nights, the order took a percentage before the envelope was sealed. When he ignored post-judgment questions, I filed a motion to compel. When he scrawled, not applicable, I filed another. The judge issued orders. He complied just enough to avoid sanctions. The process isn't instant, but it's relentless. I got ahead of any work drama. I told my manager a single sentence, no details. Personal matter. There's a legal process. Potential for unwanted contact. Here's a written statement if needed. Human Resources logged it. If anyone tried to stir things up, the file would beat the rumor. Now I am waiting for the ring or the money. I will update you when I have news. Update. Hey, everyone. I want to thank you for all your support. Here's what happened last week. The bank levy hit on a Thursday morning. I know because the court sent me a copy of the return and the credit union sent Brandon a notice the same day. His debit card was declined at a corner store that afternoon. He posted a long message about energy blockers. Offline, the math was simple. The account was frozen up to the judgment amount. A week later, the bar's payroll person started honoring the garnishment order. His Friday checks left the building shorter than he was. Some weekends, the bar paid cash, and he slipped off the grid. Other weekends, the net held. No scenes, no drama, just calculations running in the background. The community center pulled his slot from their showcase after reviewing their grant language and my case numbers. They didn't blast him online. They sent a polite email saying he wasn't eligible this cycle. He tried to sell it as a personal break, the part of the grind you don't see on the feed. That showcase is where small-time bookers scout for talent. When you miss it, the phone stays quiet. He started asking for favors. Old, we should collab. Contacts replied slower than ever. A couple said yes out of politeness and then went dark when he mentioned a fee. People remember who shows up with their own cables and who expects to use yours. Kendall's wage garnishment started the same week. Her direct deposit came in lighter. She adjusted accounts. Something had to give. It was rent. Her landlord taped a late notice to her parents' front door because she had moved back there to reset, while silently paying for half of something else. Her mother called me, voice tight, asking me to lift the order. I didn't call back, not out of cruelty. The court order exists, so no one has to beg me. Kendall tried to switch jobs 2 months in to avoid the deduction. The order followed her. It always does. That's the design. The new employer got the notice, sent it to payroll, and payroll did what payroll does. She texted, "Can we do this another way?" I replied, "Payments continue through payroll." She stopped texting. The balance dropped every pay period in small bites. I tracked it in a single column that went from 4 figures to 3 and kept falling. No celebrations, just rows turning green. I kept my own life steady. New mattress, keys labeled in a way that would make sense to no one but me. I started a slow running loop after dinner. Same route, same block, nodding to the same dog that doesn't bark. I bought a second houseplant and didn't kill it. My neighbor brought me extra tomatoes from his balcony and left them in a paper bag on my doormat. I found a morning rhythm that allowed for coffee while the street was still half asleep. Sleep came back like a cautious friend. It showed at work, because consistency looks like reliability when everyone else is sprinting. My manager gave me a messy inventory project, and I sorted it without complaining. A small raise came through at my review. Nothing life-changing, just a little more stability and a paycheck that was already on time. I replaced the wobbly bookshelf in the living room and donated the couch that had witnessed both quiet evenings and a loud mistake. The new couch fit better. The house felt like it matched my spine. Meanwhile, Brandon's couch surfing circuit ran out. Friends don't mind a night, they mind a month. He tried to frame the garnishment as proof he was hitting bigger stages, as if the court were a booking agent. When he finally answered the post-judgment discovery in full, he listed a prepaid phone account and a rideshare balance as assets. The credit union levy had emptied what it could. He tried to open a new account at another bank. They flagged it when the garnishment paperwork eventually reached them. It's slow, but it gets there. One by one, convenience is close. His phone started living on low data warnings. His car didn't disappear, but the tags expired, and he couldn't pay for the renewal on time. So he drove less and posted more. The bar manager cut his shift after a second late arrival. Nothing public, just a quiet text saying they were going in another direction. That same week, a mutual friend told me Brandon had moved in with a friend of a friend in an old building with a buzzer that sticks. Rent there is cheap because you have to haul laundry down 3 flights and share a dryer with a neighbor who believes every load is aggressive. He didn't last 2 weeks. Kendall's circle shrank. People she used to invite to brunch suddenly had family in town. She started wearing the same jacket in the same pictures because buying a new one meant skipping a bill. The ring judgment got down to the last $100-something. She sent one last text. "If I get you the rest in cash, can we stop this?" I replied, "Payroll will finish it." The next payday cleared the balance. The court mailed a notice that the judgment was satisfied. I filed it, putting the paper in a clear sleeve with the others. I didn't date for a while, not out of fear, but out of prioritizing quiet. Then, one Sunday morning at the market, someone asked about the plant in my basket, and we talked about soil and how much light an alley-facing window really gets. We exchanged numbers after we both forgot the name of the herb we were smelling and laughed at ourselves. It was simple. We met up 2 weeks later and walked the same loop I run. We didn't talk about big feelings. We talked about how hard it is to find a good lamp. I came home that night and didn't feel the need to double-check the locks. That felt like progress. The court clerk sent Brandon another notice when he ignored a second set of questions about assets. He was late to the compliance hearing, wearing sunglasses on an overcast day. The judge warned him plainly, "Answer or face sanctions." He answered just enough. I used the answers. The garnishment continued its course. I didn't ask for jail time or anything dramatic. Nobody needed that. I wanted what the court had already said I was owed, arriving in small envelopes on a schedule bigger than both of us. And then the parking lot happened, a late afternoon strip mall. I was carrying light bulbs and tape in a paper bag. They were sitting on the curb with 2 duffel bags at their feet and a plastic tote between them. They stood up when they saw me, both thinner than before. Brandon tried to make it casual. "We were hoping we'd run into you." Kendall's hands were tucked into her sleeves, knuckles white. They asked for a week on my couch. "We'll be quiet," Kendall said. "We'll clean. We just need a bridge until Friday." Brandon promised to help around the house and call me safe. That word again, used as a lever. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't list grievances. I said, "I'm not the person you ask for that anymore." Kendall's jaw trembled. Brandon pushed one more time. "You win. We can be family now." I said, "Family isn't a free pass." I offered to text them numbers for shelters and a helpline. I sent the list. The message delivered with a small ping. They stood there with the bags they could carry. A car alarm went off 2 rows over. The streetlights came on early. No big music, no announcement, just a quiet end to a long ass that started the day they chose my bed and my card and called it a mistake. They had made themselves smaller on purpose too many times. The world didn't close in on them. It just stopped holding them up. I got in my car. The houseplant would need water. The couch fit. The bookshelf didn't wobble. The front door opened with a key only I had. They watched me back out. Phones in their hands, a text with resources on the screen. Pride wrestling with logistics. I drove away without checking the rearview mirror. The court would keep sending checks until the last amount was settled. My spreadsheet had fewer lines every week. Their parents would still call it dramatic. Comment. I wanted to share a few thoughts after that story. Setting a firm boundary isn't about being unkind. It is a profound act of self-respect. You can be a good person and still decide that your peace is no longer up for negotiation. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do for someone is to let them face the natural consequences of their own choices. Notice how healing wasn't one big, dramatic event, but a series of small, quiet steps. It was a new routine, a conversation at the market, and the simple comfort of a home that felt safe again. Taking calm, responsible action is how you reclaim your space and your story from chaos. Never forget that your kindness is a gift, not an obligation for others to exploit. Ultimately, you deserve to build a life where you feel secure, not just because you are safe, but because you are valued. I hope you remember to choose your own peace today. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.